Good morning, my fellow yogic travelers. I'm mighty glad to be alive today, and I hope that you are too, as we're finishing out my week of riffing on my Christian tributaries. And of course, I'm only doing five. I've had many other inputs from the Quaker tradition and Thomas Merton and Hildegard of Bingen, but I can only cover a few of these things, so this is where I'm at. I like to let everyone know that I learned yoga in an ashram setting. And so in a certain way, I was introduced to the classical Ashtanga system, yama and niyama, asana and pranayama, pratyahara, dharana, dhyana, and samadhi, and the study of bhakti yoga, karma yoga, yana yoga, raja yoga, mantra yoga, laya yoga, until you realize it's all one thing. It's just stylistic differences. Anything less than that is not really what yoga says. You can smorgasbord and pick and choose, cherry pick what you want, but from yoga's point of view, all of that is yoga. It's one tree with many branches. But I also had opportunities to not only study in the ashram, but to go to the Magic Monastery. And so let me tell you some stories about that. When I heard about the Magic Monastery, that it was a notch above something else, I really wanted to find out what was going on there. And the first time that I went there, when they introduced me to the guest master, I hadn't even said a word. And the first thing that the guest master said to me was, "Why not?" And already I said, "Oh my God, he's filleted me without even saying anything." And I said, "Well, I don't know. I'm too young. I started too late. I have responsibilities in the world. I'm not sure." He said, he turned around and there was this huge sword on the wall, and he took it down and he gave it to me. He says, "Here, go and meditate. With this, you can cut through anything." So I went back and I stayed the night, and I thought about what he said with the sword. And then in the morning, I went back and I gave him the sword back because I said, "I can't live without my excuses." And I left. I just wasn't ready to go to the Magic Monastery. Then the next thing that happened was my own ashram had a visit from the Buddha. Yeah, he came like in an astral vision, and it was a fantastic solemn ceremony. We all sat there in the silence of his presence. He was radiating. It was great. And then when we woke up in the morning, he'd graffitied all over the walls, "Trivia, trivia, trivia, trivia." And that's when I thought about, it's really true. All the things that we do, it's all like for outward show. It's baloney. It's a bunch of trivia. But what was worse, it was not only just the trivia that was in the ashram, it was the trivia in my head. Everything I was thinking was just a bunch of trivia. And so I said, maybe I should go to the Magic Monastery now and maybe I could learn something there. And the next time that I went, they gave a monk as a guide to me, and I went around and they showed me first these different halls, and each hall had a specific kind of initiation path. One was the Hall of Laughter, where there was just gaiety and celebration 24/7, 365, the angels dancing around the throne of God. And then they took me to the Hall of Sorrows, where it was all about loss and loneliness and the orphans and the sadness when people die and the amount of suffering that goes on. Heavy, heavy, heavy vibe. And then he took me to the Hall of Words. Everything that's ever been written or said was down there. And my mind was like so full of all that stuff. I had to scream out, "Stop it, stop it!" But that was just adding more words to the whole thing. I had to get out of there. Then I went to the Hall of Silence. Just absolutely nothing. No movement. No space, no time. Just emptiness. And then finally, they took me to the last hall, the Hall of Treasures. And the monk said, "You can take anything you want with you." I decided to take the heart of Jesus, which I still have with me to this day. "As you've done unto the least of these, so you've done unto me." And it added a certain level of compassion for every human being who I meet, who I know is fighting a great battle. And then I had another experience where I had heard that in the ashram was very, very strict about no intoxicants. But I heard that in the Magic Monastery, there was sacramental wine. And if you could have a sip of the sacramental wine, You might have like a revelatory experience similar to taking psilocybin or peyote or ayahuasca or LSD. I said, I'm definitely for that. So I went and they ushered me into the room where the monk who was there said, what can I do for you? And I said, well, I've heard that there's sacramental wine. Oh, you want the real wine, huh? I said, yeah. So he turned around and behind there was a cabinet and he took out this decanter of wine and he poured me a glass. I said, here. So I drank it, and the moment I drank the wine, my whole body was surrounded by a crystal globe of a light rose tint. And all of a sudden, I saw through this crystal globe how beautiful everything was in the world. And a moment before, this monk didn't look like anything special, but all of a sudden now I saw him, and he was so beautiful, angelic in a certain way. And I wanted to speak and said, I can't believe it. Did anybody ever tell you how unbelievably beautiful you are? But as I tried to speak, I realized that the wine had burnt out my tongue and I wasn't able to talk. And then I realized, if this is the price that you have to pay to see how beautiful everything and everyone is, I'd gladly pay it. And then I realized maybe that's what it is to be a real monk, is to see how beautiful everything is and not being able to say a word about it. Then I had another story to tell about another episode I had in the Magic Monastery. First, I started off by meditating in an austere room. All it had was a bed, a Bible on a table, and a window where there was light. Otherwise, it was absolutely empty. So I figured, all right. I started to meditate in silence, sat down, staring at one of the walls. And because my concentration was so good, all of a sudden, that wall became completely transparent. And I saw through the wall into the ashram. And I was looking into the ashram, and all of a sudden I could see everything going on. I could hear the people's thoughts, and I was freaked out because the amount of individualism, selfishness that I saw, people having stashes of stuff that they weren't supposed to keep in their room, people thinking weird things and complaining, even thoughts about me. I was freaked out. I asked the headmaster, can I have a notebook so I can write some notes? And I was just writing down the facts. I wasn't trying to be gossipy or anything, just what I saw, just what I saw. I filled a couple of books with that. It was like mind-boggling what was going on behind the scenes in my ashram. I was so disturbed. And then I thought, well, I wonder if there's something behind one of the other walls. So I turned around to the opposite wall and I focused my practice on that. And all of a sudden, the walls became transparent on that side as well. But this time I wasn't seeing into my ashram, I was seeing into the Magic Monastery. And if I thought that the stuff that was going on in my ashram was deplorable, I couldn't believe what was really happening in the Magic Monastery. And it completely freaked me out. So I had to get more books to write down because those people were totally out of control with their individualism and supposedly egolessness. And I wrote down feverishly what was going on. I didn't have enough room. I had to get more books to write this down. And then I thought to myself, well, if I could see through those two walls, I wonder what's happening on the other two walls of the room. So when the guest master came to give me my food, I said, well, what's going on behind those two walls? He says, you don't want to know. So what do you mean I don't want to know? I came here to search for the truth. I want to know. And he ran away. So I was determined that the next time he came, I wasn't going to let him go so easily. And when he brought me the food the next day, I kind of collared him. I said, no, I said, you got to tell me. You got to tell me. He says, you're not going to like it. I said, you got to tell me anyway. So he said, well, behind the wall on that side are all the members of your ashram. And they're looking at you. And they're crying. And on the other wall are all the members of the Magic Monastery. And they're looking at you. And they're laughing.